Sometimes an ordinary green plant just won't do. If that's your vibe, then today's video is for you. I'm going to be talking all about this quirky, cool plant, the Alocasia poly. Welcome to my channel. I'm Cece with OneGreepea. In today's Meet the Plant episode, I'm going to be talking all about this strikingly gorgeous plant with a reputation for being difficult. I love the Alocasia poly, the dark green glossy leaves, the really evident veining. The backs of the leaves are almost a burgundy color. The plant grows from rhizomes rather than traditional, more common plant roots. And that's going to be important as we talk later in the episode about how to propagate the plant. I always like to start my Meet the Plant episodes discussing the botanical name and the origins of the plant. That's a little bit challenging with this plant. The Alocasia poly has somewhat unknown origins. It is a hybrid plant. It is believed to be a cultivar of the Alocasia amazonica, which is a very, very similar plant. It just gets slightly larger. And the Alocasia amazonica is a cross between two other Alocasia species. So it's just a little difficult to know exactly the parentage of this plant. This plant is fairly commonly found in plant shops and even some of your big box stores that carry houseplants. It sometimes goes by the name African mask plant. Most Alocasia plants are native to Southeast Asia. So let's talk about the care and maintenance of the Alocasia poly. As I mentioned in the intro, it does have a reputation for being challenging. And while it's not your most difficult plant, it is completely possible for the average houseplant owner to have a beautiful Alocasia poly. There are just some very specific demands of this plant for it to thrive. Let's start with light. When I first got this plant, I erroneously thought that the plant wanted less light, lower light on the spectrum. And as a result, my plant just did not thrive. In fact, it kind of continually lost leaves and didn't have a lot of new growth. After about a year of owning the plant, I clued in that this plant actually really likes light. I moved it into a south-facing window, and it has absolutely burst into just a second life since then. The leaves are giant and there's a lot of new growth. Way down here you can see that there's a new stem that's about to start, and this is a newer leaf. So it is doing really well. It really likes the light coming from the south-facing window. The next most important factor is watering. The Alocasia poly does not want to dry out. That being said, it also doesn't want to stay soggy. So therein lies the complexity of finding that Goldilocks balance between not drying all the way out, but also not staying wet. So I have found about every 5 to 7 days I'm needing to water my plant. I either just stick my finger right into the soil or I use my water meter to check to see if it is on the drier side and ready for water. Now that is going to lead to another very important factor, and that is the soil blend that you use for this plant. Most of my plants I talk about on here, I say you want a chunky, airy mix. The Alocasia poly actually wants a slightly richer mix, so a little less of the orchid bark, of the bigger pieces, bigger chunks in the soil, a little bit richer soil that's going to hold on to more moisture. Now, this is not on the order of, say, a fern or a calathea that really wants more moisture. Definitely you want it to dry out an inch or so down the pot, so you don't want it to constantly being wet, soggy soil. There's the balance. When you find that balance, which is going to be affected by the amount of light your plant is getting, then your plant will thrive. Another very important factor in the care and maintenance of the Alocasia poly is humidity. This plant loves humidity. The more, the better. Currently, I have my plant living in my bathroom, so it is getting the highest humidity in my home, and it has been doing very well in that level of humidity. How you will know that the plant would prefer more humidity is the tips are going to turn brown. And in my home where I have forced air in the winter and it gets a little bit drier, it's just something that I know I have to deal with on this plant, and I'm okay with a slightly imperfect plant. I'm doing the best I can as far as humidity. I fertilize my Alocasia poly just like I do all the rest of my plants throughout the entire year. As I see new growth happening, I use a very, very diluted liquid fertilizer, and I always have that listed down in the caption of my video. So if you're ever wondering what that is, it's always in the caption of my video. Before we move on to propagation, I want to give you one quick do and one quick don't as far as the care of your plant. Number one, do check often for spider mites. Alocasia tend to attract spider mites for whatever reason, and you want to be able to catch and treat spider mite infestations as early as you can. Generally, the way that I have seen it on this plant is by looking up here where the two lobes of the leaves come together. That's where sometimes I will see tiny, very light webbing, and that indicates to me there are spider mites. I will get out my little hand lens and look closely, and I can see little tiny mites that way. This is a very easy condition to treat. I first start by spraying off any of the spider mites and their webbing, and then I treat the plant with neem oil. I keep the plant isolated, so I just put it down in my tub for a week, and then I treat it again, and another week leave it isolated, and generally that has completely taken care of any problems. And two, the don't stress if your plant loses a leaf. This happens with this kind of a plant, and that typically does not mean the plant is dying. It could happen for any number of reasons. It could happen because something in your care routine has changed or has gotten drier in the atmosphere, or any number of factors. Do not sweat it. Now, if you start losing a lot of leaves, that's something to pay attention to, but a leaf here or there, do not worry, especially the older leaves. Eventually they are going to fall off and die. So you love your plant and you want to share it with someone else, or you just want to make another one for yourself. How do you do that? The easiest way to propagate the Alocasia poly is by division. The reason that it is so easy to do is because this plant grows from rhizomes rather than traditional roots. Rhizomes are similar to little clumps of tulip bulbs, or they look like little potatoes under the surface of the soil. And you merely need to uncover those and divide them. You can either pull them apart or use a knife or a blade and just cut those right apart. One of the coolest things about a rhizome is that it's like a little power pack for the plant. It contains nutrients and water. It allows the plant to live when conditions aren't perfect. Now, before we end, I have to mention dormancy, because dormancy happens to these kinds of plants, and it's not something to worry about because of that rhizomatic structure that I just talked about. Sometimes the plant just feels that the conditions above soil are not conducive to its life, and so it will go into dormancy. You will lose all of the leaves, all of the growth above the soil will die. Do not freak out. This is just a normal defense mechanism of the plant. If you're worried about it, you can dig up the rhizomes and check them. If they're still firm and not dry and shriveled up, then they're fine. So I would bury them back under the soil, pull back slightly on the watering and be patient. The plant will come back to life. Before you know it, you will see little growth coming up out of the soil, which indicates the plant is ready to wake up again. So is this plant challenging? Yes. Is it also extremely rewarding? Yes. Definitely a plant I would suggest that you consider for your collection. Thank you for watching my video today. I hope that it was fun for you to get to know a new, quirky, beautiful, fun plant. If you already have one in your collection, leave your care tips down in the comments below. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so you never miss any of my planty content. As always, my plant friends, let's keep growing together a greener world.